Hi, class. Welcome to the first podcast number one. Today we're going to focus on chapter two. We're going to skip chapter one and revisit it on Tuesday. Just a reminder, make sure that you bring in your article so that we can get into groups and discuss the article from the newspaper clippings. For now, what we're going to do is basically go over the PowerPoint slide. Let me bring that up. I'm not going to go over the whole PowerPoint. I just want to give you a sort of refresher course in research methods so you can get an understanding of what research methods in psychology is all about, and then hopefully be able to complete your homework assignment and respond to the questions that I pose in this podcast. So basically, psychology is a science, and to do developmental research in psychology, it's like most other psychology branches as well. In order to explain someone's behavior or in order to predict someone's behavior, you're going to need a theory that kind of guides you in doing the research. So there were several theories in chapter one that you could review that helps you explain why people do the things that they do. Now, whichever theory resonates with you will guide your research. So the theory is basically a set of statements or principles that help explain and predict behavior. Once you select your theory that you like or theories that you like, then to do your research design, you want to only test one specific statement or one specific part of that theory. So if the theory says that we acquire knowledge through experiences and that helps us develop schemas about how the world functions, then you might want to test just one specific aspect of that. So what kind of knowledge do we acquire, and how does that relate to how we function in everyday life? So a hypothesis is drawn from your theory, and it's one testable prediction that basically states this relationship between two variables that you're interested in. So in psychology, a variable is basically whatever it is that you're interested in. So let's say we're interested in popularity, and we're interested in what the relationship between popularity is and being a socially competent individual is. So social competence and popularity. So perhaps we have a theory that says have more knowledge about friends or making friends, and that's why they're more popular. So that would be our hypothesis. We suspect that social competence increases popularity. Now that relationship needs to be investigated in terms of psychological research, but it needs to be objective. So popularity needs to be quantifiable in some sense. So maybe you will poll the students to nominate the most popular people in the class. Maybe you might observe the children or students and see who is most competent when they're engaging in social interactions. But whatever the case, it needs to be objective. So it needs to be observable characteristics that you can see. Once you've laid the foundation for your research, then there are different ways to carry out the study. So these additional research methods are used to help you carry out the study. So how are you going to actually do this study? One way is that you can actually observe individuals in their natural environment. Another way is that you can interview parents and children and ask them about their popularity or their social competence. They can be open-ended or they can be by survey. And then another way is that you can actually bring them into the laboratory and observe them in social interactions, and observe how socially competent they are, and then take measures of their popularity, maybe from their teacher's report of how popular they are. So there's the three ways that you can sort of carry out that study. In addition to those methods, there are different designs, research method designs that you can do. One is a case study. So let's say you just want to focus on one person that is exceptionally gifted in being a socially competent individual, and you want to see how popular they are. Usually this is for clinical cases. Another way is that you could look at a correlational design. So a correlational design basically describes how the two variables are related. And in order to describe this relationship, you collect data on lots of people, and then you plot out on a graph the scatter of these data points on this graph. It's called a scatter plot. And then it'll help you identify whether those are either positive or negative. They call this positive or negative correlations. Now, the closer that you reach 1, the more likely it is that it's a perfect correlation. So it can vary between 0 and 1. So for an example, you'll see this in your slide as well. Our hypothesis is that social competence should lead to greater popularity, or we're interested in basically, are these two things related? So the correlational approach is just basically answering the question whether they're related or not. You measure competence depending on how you measure it, through the observation in the lab, through teacher's report, parents' report, whatever the case. But what you do is you create a scatter plot, and let's see if there's a better view of this. Unfortunately, your view of this is a little bit better than the one on my view on the screen. It's something with the PowerPoint here on this document. So you'll see on your PowerPoint that it's grayed out, and basically this is a graph, and down here on competence, if you have numbers down there, I believe it was 0, 2, 4, 5, and 6, so it increases, and the same with popularity. It starts from 0 to 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, and so on. What you do is you collect data from individuals, and each of these little data points here are particular individuals. So let's say you plot out the data point for the first individual, and they got a 2 on their competence scale, and then they got a 40% on popularity. You plot out another one, and then you get this nice graph of where everyone stands. So you notice there's really no pattern here, and researchers, when they see this, will conclude that social competence and popularity are not related, so the correlation is 0. Now, if you do this again, and voila, you happen to find this perfect relationship going up. This is what's called a positive relationship. So you'll notice here, and this one actually has numbers, that as competence rises, so the higher you are in competence, the higher it is that you also score on popularity. So see all these, pretend that's you got really high on competence, you're also high on popularity. So that's a positive relationship because both increase at the same time. Now, this is fictional data, it's not real data, but if you happen to see this on your graph and you see this negative slope words, this is a negative correlation. You plot out your graph, the data points get plotted in here, and you notice that the lower the competence, the higher the popularity. So people who score low on social competence are actually very high, and people who are high on competence are low on popularity. So you'll notice that as one goes up, the other goes, one goes up, the other goes down. So competence is high, popularity is low. This inverse relationship is a negative relationship. It's just as strong as a positive because the slope is, but it indicates in what direction the relationship is. Now, correlational research is popular because it's fast and it's a simple design. You just take data from people, you observe it, and you plot it out on the graph. You can see how easy that is. But the issue is that there's limited insight. We don't really know what caused the other. Is it because people who are popular are socially competent, or are socially competent people really popular? And then there's also the issue of, well, what makes people socially competent? And is that really driving the popularity? So there's no cause and effect. And what I pose to you here, if you want to write in your discussion post, is what are aspects of children's behavior and or characteristics that might correlate with children's social competence? So what kind of behavior or characteristics of the children would correlate with children's social competence, would help them with their social competence? And then if you don't want to answer that question, what aspects of parenting might correlate with children's social competence? So what parenting behavior could be correlated with social competence? And then if you think of these aspects of parenting or children's behavior, what are the possible explanations for these correlations? So that's one, a couple of thought questions for you to consider. Another very popular design, so we have case studies, we have correlational studies, and then the last design that I'm going to discuss, there are other designs, but these are the most common, is the experimental research. Here, because correlational cannot establish cause and effect, and experimental research can establish cause and effect. And to do that, you have to manipulate or modify or change this variable that you think is causing the outcome. So the independent variable that is affecting popularity in this hypothetical study that we're talking about is social competence. So you have to manipulate social competence in some way and then measure popularity. In an experimental, in this research design, the independent variable here is social competence, and the outcome variable is the dependent variable is popularity. So I'm not sure why that's coming out like that, but it should say experiment. So we have to manipulate the social competence variable or the independent variable, you're going to have at least have two groups. One group is going to get social competence and the other group is not going to get it. So how are you going to give social competence to someone? Well, you might actually, if your theory says that children who are socially competent have more knowledge about making friends, then you figure out what is this knowledge that they know and you give them that treatment. So you give them social competence training. And you might train them for however long that you want, and then group 2 doesn't get anything. So that's how you manipulate your independent variable. Another essential thing in experimental design is that you must have random assignment. That means that each person that comes to the study has an equal chance of going into one group, into both groups. So you flip a coin and then that gives them a random assignment. And that ensures that both of the two groups are matched in terms of its characteristics. So they're equally the same because they had an equal chance to get into the group. Have to have the random assignment, otherwise it's not a true experiment. So that's the key points in terms of correlational experimental design. Another thing that you have to consider in developmental research is that we're interested in development. So one way that you could track development is through longitudinal research. So you look at the stability of popularity. So let's say we make them socially competent. Does that help them later on at future times? And that also looks at the effects of early experiences on later behavior. So this is just a quick little graph or representation. You plot now in September the popularity, you measure the competence level at time 1, and then you do it at time 2 and time 3, and then you still see if this relationship still exists. So here, again, because of the graph being presented on this computer, for some reason it's not in the same way that you have your graphs. So these dots here represent different data points, and you'll see that there is a linear progression for those who have high competence, and there's a downward progression over time for those who have low competence. So longitudinal studies let us look at the stability of our treatment or the stability of the relationship that we propose exists. The advantages that is that we can establish cause and effect because we have manipulated it and we have proven that there are differences between group 1 and group 2. And then the advantages of this longitudinal design is that you are also able to track the stability. Now, longitudinal designs have this, of course, disadvantage because it costs a lot of money, and the participants who participate might leave, especially if it's a year-long study, 2-year-long study, they've graduated or whatever the case, you lose participants. So you're not really sure if you're really capturing the right population by this attrition. Another way to study development is to either do, again, the correlation or the experimental research, but then look at this at only one time frame, but with different age groups. So you examine the developmental differences of popularity and social competence for someone that is 5 years old and then someone that's 10 years old, and then someone that's an adolescent. So you get 3 different age groups, and then you compare the differences to see if that relationship is still the same. But there are some disadvantages, and we'll talk about that later in class. I'm going to skip the ethical issues, and we'll discuss that when you guys bring your articles in. But for now, I have to leave you for a moment and bring my accomplice here to have a conversation about doing research methods. So in just a moment, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, students. We are joined here with my partner in crime, Camille Navratil.
Hello, class.
Hello, hello. And basically, he and I are trying to think of a study. We're not really sure if we're going to carry out the study, but we're brainstorming. So as I mentioned in class before, our department has just acquired a heart rate monitor that is able to track your heart rate, your skin conductance, how much you're sweating, your blood pressure, all these great things to see how you respond in stressful situations or just to see how you respond to your environment. So we got to thinking when we first started doing actually Camille is a motion graphics artist, and so last year we did a visual piece for Electroforce. And in this visual piece, we created this kind of holographic, I'll let you explain.
So basically, the festival was held in this forest that was really beautifully lit by other lights. And in addition to that, we made this sort of holographic looking projection that represented pretty much just animals and different shapes. Maybe should we play it first?
Yeah, we should play it, and then we can talk about what kind of experiment we can do with this.
Okay.
So this is just a scene from the...
So that's just like a little compilation of it. So these are the objects we created. There are fish, there are hearts, babies, all kinds of different tricky things.
So most people who came and saw this were really happy and pleased by it. Not to be a show off or whatnot, but we started thinking
vibe itself or the visuals, but anyway, something worked.
So we were curious as to whether having this holographic experience or even this video with fishes or whatever the case, maybe this visual art actually could lead to some health benefits. And since City Tech has this heart rate monitor, maybe perhaps we can carry out some kind of study that we would develop a video that is similar to this, or maybe we can even have a small room that could project and we could hook up individuals to see if there are benefits in being exposed to this holographic or visual
in general.
Visual experience in general.
Kind of thinking about what kind of visual could actually stimulate you and help you with your health.
So actually, when we were thinking about this, we realized that other people had already monopolized on this and started making money. And I'm just going to show you a quick clip from a company, and this is available on YouTube, that uses this kind of 3D visual meditation CD or audio visual DVD to help people deal with depression and other issues.
So this one actually is stereoscopic, which you put on your 3D glasses, and it should maybe help you even more, I guess. But
so you be the judge of it.
If you have your glasses, put them on. Actually, where's my glasses?
I don't know where our glasses are.
Audiovisual meditation sessions at binauraleffects.com.
So you can hear the Borat voiceover here. that position.
So
And that's one of them.
you kind of get the point of this video here. For me, it doesn't work in terms of calming me. And I don't know if it works for you. If it does work for you, you can respond to the post as to why it works. But it doesn't work for me. So even though it's around, and I was looking, and there's definitely plenty of visual meditation research around and companies who advertise on this. But through my research, I really wasn't satisfied with any of their visual presentations. So I'm still interested in creating some kind of visual art that could help increase the health benefits for individuals like myself and maybe other people who might be interested in this kind of work too. So my hypothesis is that whatever visual art that we create, visual art meditation should lead to greater health benefits. And how we're going to measure that health benefit, one way, at least I'm interested in, is the heart rate with the heart rate monitor that we have. Any other thoughts that you might want to?
Well, I was mainly interested because all these visuals that we see here are really generic, and you can see it in your media player or in your iTunes screensaver, whatever that is. But now with all this technology and software that we have, we can develop any kind of visual in 3D and 2D, whatever we want. So I just really wanted to push it towards something more objective instead of, this kind of weird animal spinning around that doesn't really mean anything. But then on the other hand, I don't know if giving meaning, like such an obvious meaning to the visual would bias the people who are watching it. So that's another thing that needs to be researched, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think that since the independent variable that we're interested here is basically the visual art, we're going to have to manipulate whatever it is that we're interested in. So perhaps one group is going to get one kind of visual art, whatever that
Right.
might be.
Yeah.
One group might get this old, I don't want to say old, but this traditional form of visual art. And maybe another group will just get something else. So we might look at 3 groups of individuals who get 3 different manipulations of this independent variable visual art. And so that would actually mean, hopefully class, you guys remember from the short little other podcast, that this is an experimental design because we have more than one group. And we're trying to test to see if this visual art has any kind of health improvement with their heart rate or their stress reduction. So we can measure stress reduction by their heart rate variability. That's something in your next class that you would take in psychophysiology if you do go on. So we're not going to talk about that in this course. But how we're going to measure reduction of stress or how we're going to measure greater health benefits is basically hooking you up onto the heart rate monitor and looking to see the patterns of your heart rate.
Yes. And to push it forward, the idea was also to hook your brain up to some program, and depending on what's in your brain, how stressed you are, what are you thinking about at this point, the visual would be controlled by your own brain. So then each one of you would have a different visual depending on how you feel and what you need to see and stuff like that. But that's really
pushing it.
22nd century. So.
That's really pushing it forward. So what Camilla's proposing here is that we could, if we had some brain imaging equipment, is to link what your brain imaging or waves are producing and then link it to your visual experience. But again, that's way beyond what we can do now. But it could still be studied.
Possible.
It is possible, but very expensive,
yes.
and City Tech doesn't have it. So that's just another thought. If you want to comment on that, you can too. What else? I think that's about it. I just wanted to have you guys listen on a conversation that we have. Oh, Camille, did you want to show anything else before we let them go?
No, but I mean, there's just few, like, for example, this is a beautiful visual. It's still not objective, completely abstract, but It's
We don't have anything done yet, but we thought we'd share with you some of our ideas, and maybe we can actually have this study come to life um, based on your thoughts and comments. So I'm going to leave you now, and I will bring up a couple questions for you guys to respond to also. So I have actually mentioned several questions throughout the podcast. You are free to comment in the discussion board on any questions or any thoughts that come to you as you listen to these podcasts. Until next time, bye. I really like this one. The music is very good too.
it's really mysterious.
This music might be too much for someone I think that has like depression or something.
Yes, that's yeah, it's a crowd. It's definitely not good for me.
Okay.
Take care.